Hello and welcome to the Stories of Northern Life podcast. Have you ever wondered how street names got their name? Who chooses them, and what significance do they hold, if any? In this episode, you will get a little glimpse of who chooses the names in a period of time of Sault Ste. Marie history, as well as some of the significance of a few streets used by you and many generations before. So let's get into it. We are starting this story in the 60s when the city began to amalgamate. Tarrant Taurus in September 1964 and Cora Township in 1965 became one with Sault Ste. Marie. One issue that needed to be resolved after some time under the new amalgamation was that there were many duplicate street names. For example, there is Victoria Avenue in Cora Township and another in the Sault, which later became Victoria Avenue East and Victoria Avenue West, which to me, I don't imagine this change to have been that helpful for mail carriers and other delivery people. So it was decided by the city council one Tuesday evening that duplicating street names in the city due to amalgamation would be remedied by the Sault Historical Society. An offer from the society to assist in the naming of schools, public buildings, streets, and subdivisions was accepted by the council as well. This offer tied in with a request for duplicate street renaming. In July 1977, there was an article in the Sault Star that exclaimed how Sault Ste. Marie is suffering from a shortage of street names. Even a city drainage and subdivision engineer said that their biggest problem is coming up with the new names. Most names are suggested by private developers who construct virtually all new residential roads in the Sault. Mr. Salone, a member of the city planning staff, will then make sure the names don't conflict with existing street designations. City Council has the final say, but rarely asks for the change. The developers also usually choose the designation, such as street, avenue, road, or drive, but rarely use crescent, court, or cul-de-sac unless it actually is shaped like so. It was suggested to the Historical Society that whenever a new subdivision came to be, it should be suitably named, and the streets in that subdivision should have a name regarding the name of the subdivision. Also, a suggestion was received that a list should be prepared by the Historical Society of special names for schools and other lists for appropriate names for public places, streets, and so forth. An undated article states that the strange names applied to such places and buildings in the city at the time had been subject to much comment and criticism for some time by both citizen and visitors, and it has been suggested that the society might try to correct this practice in some way. A resolution put forth by Dr. C.M.R. Reid and passed was the appropriate authorities being notified that the name committee of the Historical Society for the suggestion of naming the schools, public buildings, subdivisions, and streets. This is suggested that the public be swiftly informed and that the future generations may be aware of their heritage. Even in 1987, there were still quite a few duplications. Visitors and Sault residents got confused by Churchill Avenue and Churchill Boulevard, Andrew Street and Andrew Terrace, East Street and Eastern Street, Kent Avenue and Kent Crescent, St. Mary's Avenue and St. Mary's River Drive, and officials and developers were just trying not to make the situation worse. While the Historical Society was around for naming suggestions, and other officials were trying to name new streets with much thought and significance, and without duplication, the street names in our downtown core were considered with much thought and connection to our early ties to Britain from the beginning. So what do you think came first, the streets or the city? Lots of our street names go back more than 170 years, when the little community at the foot of the rapids was known as St. Mary's. Earliest activity in the area was around the Hudson's Bay Post and the rapids, where the trading was carried out. The settlers' houses straggled along a trail which followed the river. This trail was to become Queen Street. Named during the reign of Queen Victoria, the name Queen was chosen in memory of her. Following the same reasoning, some lifetime residents of the Sault consider Albert Street to be named after Prince Albert and Wellington Street after the Duke of Wellington. Bay Street was merely a path at the time as well, and not known as Bay Street until much later. General Brock was very much a hero of the day, and Brock Street was named in his honor. Spring Street was named because the whole region was rich in springs of purest water. Many of the houses on Spring Street between Wellington and Albert Street had springs in their basement for years. March Street was named in honor of Captain Wilson's aunt, Miss March, who kept house for him. Captain Wilson, who came to the Sault in 1843 to succeed his father as a government officer, owned the land from Spring Street to Elgin and between Albert and Waterfront. As the town grew, Captain Wilson gave the town a strip, and it was duly called March Street. Bruce Street is believed to have been named after a one-time Lieutenant Governor James Bruce, who became Lord Elgin, after whom Elgin Street was named. Dennis Street was named after an early Algoma surveyor. There is no clue why Tancred Street was named so, but Gore Street was called to commemorate the memory of Lieutenant Gore, who was in charge of the military. Hudson Street recalls the Hudson's Bay Post and Portage Avenue because of the famous old portage. Superior Street was later named Queen Street West, owed its name to Lake Superior. Murray Street, now Albert West, was first named in honor of W. Murray, who later became Lord Cathcart, and Cathcart Street was named after him. And all these streets were contained between the city boundaries. The boundaries were East and West Street. Stepping away from the downtown core, we look further inland. Base line, second line, third line, and the list continues, were named that way because townships were laid out in square mile sections, with the lines each being 1 mile apart. So taking away from all of this, while you're roaming around Sault Ste. Marie, take a moment to acknowledge the names of the streets you pass by every day, you live on, and maybe work on. They may have a strong connection to the history of Sault Ste. Marie, or to the area. Or maybe they were just chosen by a developer. Even still, I challenge you to just observe and recognize the thought and significance of street names in your neighborhood. And that's all I have for you today, but come back next week and I'll have another episode ready for you all. Thank you so much for listening.